Welcome back to an End Cut movie review. Today we have Argylle. And is this Henry Cavill's audition for James Bond? And does this movie also contain every spy movie ever made just put into this script? Let's find out. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Henry Cavill's in this film. He plays Argylle. He's also auditioning for James Bond in this film. And he and John Cena have a battle of the chins on this movie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. He definitely is auditioning as James Bond. If it's my pick out of any of them, it has to be him. He's English, he looks the best in a suit, apart from that stupid, ridiculous haircut he had in this film. Other than that, he looked amazing as James Bond, and I think he's going to make a great covert spy.
It was James Bond mixed with toy soldiers in this film. If you know, you know. If you've seen that great film from 1991, the greatest movie ever. Or The Commander from Toy Soldier.
He's mog-maxing everyone in this film. He's got the fattest chin of all time.
And him and John Cena just battling for the biggest chin on the screen. They had to create a new camera to be able to fit both those guys' chins on the screen, like with how big they were.
10 years they waited for James Cameron to make that camera for them.
Bryce Dallas Howard plays a novelist in this film, a novelist who writes spy thrillers, and in the film we find out that her books are actually predicting real-life events that are happening in the present day, and she begins to get hunted by spies who want to find out how she knows what she knows and how she's predicting the future. Sam Rockwell's character then enters the movie and is the real-life version of the character that she wrote in these books, Argylle, who Henry Cavill plays, and it's sort of like a split universe between Sam Rockwell's character being the real-life version of her character, her main character that she writes all her books about, and Henry Cavill being the imaginary fake version that she created in her mind, and how they're really the same person. And the film is just a fantastical, crazy, eccentric version of what spy novels or spy movies are, and it essentially has every theme and every event that you could imagine in every single spy movie or book that you've ever read thrown into this film all in one, in 225 minutes of just every single spy thing you could ever think of.
Sam Rockwell might be one of the best co-stars to ever hit the screen, but he doesn't play anything different to what he's used to playing. It's kind of like the original Sam Rockwell back on screen, but it's good to see him in this spy kind of covert op role or character that he's playing, because he does it so well. And I think that that's what kind of made the movie, because his comedic timing is like no one else's. It's his own.
And it's also like a good parallel split universe between Sam Rockwell looks like just a typical generic everyday guy, and then Henry Cavill is like exactly what you would think a spy would look like, you know, like the Jack Reacher guy who plays in the new Jack Reacher TV show, like this big hulking spy guy who's got infinite plot armor, who can kill all the bad guys, who can get out of any sort of situation, no matter how dire, no matter how outnumbered he is. And then Sam Rockwell walks in on the screen. Like the first time you see him, he looks like a hobo, and it's just, that is exactly what a spy would look like. And he literally refers to this in the film. He says, there's no way that Argylle, who is Bryce Dallas Howard's imagination of what a spy would look like, would be able to pass as a spy, because, I mean, look at the man, Henry Cavill. He's this 6'2" hulking bloke who stands out in any room that he goes in. Same with John Cena, who also stars in this film, who's great. And yet Sam Rockwell blends in perfectly because he just looks like an everyday generic kind of guy. So the juxtaposition of those two playing the same person, but one's a fantastical version and one's the real life version, was a really good way of showing, like, I guess not ridiculous, but how funny our imagination and how funny spy movies can be. That was a good way to bridge like fantasy and real life.
Now, one thing I feel like I have to mention with this film is that whatever you've looked at for the trailers and for the posters, it's obviously very confusing from what you've been promoted to and marketed to of who the real main star is and the co-stars are. Don't get confused with who the real characters are, because at the front of the poster it has Dua Lipa, Henry Cavill, Samuel L. Jackson, and then in the back it's actually got the pretty much main cast there. So just be cautious of when you're looking at that and you're going into this film thinking you're going to see all these big names on screen. Not really. They're probably in there for maybe 10, 15 minutes max, and that's probably Henry Cavill at the most at 15.
The film sort of sets up the opening sequence, which is almost like an arcade game. Like, if you ever played Time Crisis, if you ever went to the arcade and played Time Crisis, or if you ever played like a video game like Uncharted, or even like some of the Call of Duty games, the opening sequence is almost like that. It's got questionable CGI, but once you realise that Bryce Dallas Howard's character is actually a novelist, and she's retelling the story that she's written in the novel, you sort of begin to realise that it does play out very much like your imagination would if you were reading a book and you had to create the scene in your brain. All just completely crazy. And I guess it works for this film.
I wouldn't get too held up about the CGI in the first bit, but the CGI does play out to be quite average throughout the entire movie, especially in the backpack with the cat. It looked horrible every time it went to that cat. Probably not the main take from this film. The main take would be the direction of what the storyline was going, because there was too many plot points to even understand what was happening. The first 40 minutes of this film, or the first hour, was absolutely the best spy movie that's been made. And then it just takes a turn for the worst. It just hits rock bottom after that. There's way too many over-inflated action scenes that don't make any sense, and they're just ridiculous. Like, there's a musical scene in here. This movie just doesn't make any sense after that.
Yeah, the first 90 minutes were perfect, but it's almost like they ran out of a way to be able to wrap up the storyline. So then they thought, let's go to the drawing board, let's go to the writing room, and let's get some ideas. And they went in that writing room, and they had a whiteboard, and they wrote down 75 ideas on that whiteboard. And then they said, which ideas should we put in this film off this whiteboard? And then they all turned around and said, every single one of them. And they did do that. They put all of them in there. Every single storyline. First 90 minutes of this film, great. You're like, this is a sick film. You're drawn in. You have no idea why people are chasing after this girl. You have no idea who she can trust. She's got many people who are coming after her. Many people are trying to help her. And then after that, it just becomes like the most ridiculous film you've ever seen in your life. A perfect example of this is there's a scene where they're in a room that has lots of oil canisters, lots of oil tanks in there. They're shooting bullets, the oil's spraying all over the floor. And so one of the main bad guys says, guys, stop shooting. We can't have any sparks in here, obviously because oil's flammable. The place is going to go up in flames if we keep shooting. Let's turn to knives. So then what does Bryce Dallas Howard's character do? She creates ice skating blades out of knives and starts skating around the floor. I don't know if you've ever struck a knife on the concrete, but it sparks. Immediately it sparks. Somehow that doesn't blow up. Somehow there's no fire in this whole joint. Alright, I'll look past that. Cool. She somehow kills all these people. Fucking Sophia Bultala style, Rebel Moon. One by one, these guys have guns. She's skating around on fucking ice rink. She's fucking Blades of Glorying it in there. Doing the blue steel. Then, after she's killed everyone, she decides to unload a mag on her submachine gun in the room. Yet nothing blows up in flames. How is that possible? Physics, people. It doesn't work. First 90 minutes, great. Last 90 minutes, I don't even know what it was. Don't even know.
And not just that scene. There was one other scene where they turns into a musical and some random smoke scene where there's every color of the rainbow and they're somehow John Wicking themselves through this smoke with infrared gas masks. I didn't know that was a real thing. And then they walk in through probably 45 different people and kill all of them, and then they're just dancing and kissing in the scene. Like, it makes no sense why they're dancing. This film was building up their love interest slowly and slowly. It took the weirdest turn possible and then finished on the worst note of jumping into an event and then going into this oil rig that Geordie just announced. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Following that scene, once they've taken out like every single person, 70-year-old Bryan Cranston comes in and drops the worst one-liner ever, saying, if you want to do something, you gotta do it yourself. Brother, did you not just see them wipe out like 150 of your mercs and you're gonna beat them with a shotgun? Just real stupid. So yeah, this movie probably went for like 40, 50, 60 minutes too long, and it just feels like they got to a point where they had this really good story written, they had all these storylines coming into one to finish, and they did not know how to finish it.
Marv has mentioned that he's making more franchises of spy films, and if he's condensed all of that information into this film, why not just push it throughout the rest of the spy films that you're going to make later? That would make more sense if he did it through that timeline compared to pushing everything in this film. He didn't need to go for 2 hours and 35 minutes. It was perfect for the first hour to hour and a half, and then it just took a turn. So they shouldn't have done that. Probably should have wrapped it up very quickly.
It's really hard to review it because, like we said, the first 90 minutes, we were involved, we were invested, we loved it, and then the last 40 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it was almost, it was hard to watch. It was just ridiculous. Like, the last 20-minute sequence, 15-minute sequence is some of the worst cinema I've ever seen. Like, just a ridiculous boss battle with the stupidest storyline and just flat-out shit acting from Bryce Dallas Howard. Like, it just was so dumb. After the first 90 minutes, she's good, but the last 15, 10 minutes of this movie, ridiculous. Like, it almost wanted to leave the cinema. That's how, like, boring it was.
We do want to go in on it, but we can't spoil it for you because you have to go watch this film and just to understand where we're coming from. It's actually ridiculous. One thing that they did very well in this film was the transitions. Honestly, when I say this is no hyperbole. The greatest transitions in a film I've seen probably ever. I don't think another movie has taken stride like these have and pioneered these transitions. And you don't see that too often in this day and age in cinema, going the extra mile, especially with CGI. But that's one thing that this film did immaculately, and that was transitions.
And another thing that was well in this film, the acting was really good. Like, Bryce Dallas Howard played a really good, clumsy damsel in distress that was really genuine and sort of a good character on the screen that you enjoyed watching and you sort of were rooting for her, hoping that she would do well. The acting was really good. John Cena and Henry Cavill, like we said, had great chemistry. It was a good film. 90 minutes. Great film. The rest of the movie, not that great.
So overall, I reckon I'm going to rate this about a 40%. If it was just purely those first 90 minutes, this would be getting close to a 90. But it wasn't, so that's all I'm going to give it.
For my rating for this film, first 90 minutes, I give it a 10 out of 10. Everything after that, I give it like a 4 out of 10. It was just not very good at all. They built great stepping stones for a great movie, and then it just sort of all went out the window. I'm not sure if they couldn't think of a way to complete the storyline, to close the plot holes that they'd created. I don't know. It's kind of disappointing because it was really building up to be a great movie. Really great.
Alright guys, this has been another End Cut Movie Review. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Would you like to see Henry Cavill as James Bond? Because we would.
100% I would.
Or even John Cena.
Anyway guys, peace, we out.
Peace.
And cut.